The following is a Hoop Ball presentation. Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast.
What's happening, friends? Welcome to another episode of Fantasy NBA Today, a Hoop Ball presentation. Hoop Ball. It's Dan Besbris. I'm your host, at Dan Besbris on Twitter, if you'd like to give me a follow. Most of you, I'm guessing, probably already have. Going out on a limb with that one. But if you haven't, again, it's DANBESBRIS. It is one of those names where when I write it out, people are like, why is this a difficult name to find? And then when I say it over the phone, they're like, oh, okay. So, again, it's BESBRIS if you want to give me a follow. At Hoopball Fantasy, at Hoopball Tweets are the two accounts for our good friends here at Hoopball, our benefactors at Fantasy NBA Today. I want to start today's podcast by, again, thanking everybody for listening and then also mentioning that we've got a brand new podcast out at Hoopball. It's not a fantasy show, so I realize it's not for all of you listening to this one. But if any of you out there happens to be a Brooklyn Nets fan, we have a brand new Brooklyn Nets podcast. It is the third in our series of team podcasts. We now have a Lakers show, a Kings show, and a Nets show. I highly recommend it. Two of our fantasy writers, actually, here at Hoopball, Najee Adams and Hunter, whose last name I can't pronounce properly, put this bad boy together. It's excellent. You can follow at HoopballNets is the Twitter handle. Again, it's HoopballNets. Pretty easy to remember. The show is just the Hoopball Nets podcast. It's being tweeted out from that account. It should be available on iTunes later today. It's already on Google Play and YouTube and Facebook and Hoopball. They're awesome. They have a ton of chemistry, presumably because they've been friends for like a decade. And it's just a really nice deep dive into Nets stuff. So again, I know it's not necessarily everybody's cup of tea here that happens to be a fantasy person, but if you're a Nets fan, I think you'd really enjoy it, and anything you can do to help us here at Hoopball on top of that is always appreciated as well. So nice work from Najee and Hunter. Again, the Hoopball Nets podcast, the new thing out there. Our second most recent podcast edition is the Box Score Breakdown. I think most of you have heard me rant about that one in a good way, rant and rave positively. It's the Box Score Breakdown. It comes out at the end of the games every night. Neil Rochlani, Adrian Benjamin's putting that show together. Beautifully done. They have to parse the games the second they end. So they're recording that thing. I've said this before, and then we're going to dig into today's stuff, but it blows my mind, the dedication. Those guys record at 8 o'clock Pacific time when all of the Eastern and Central time games are done. So that way, as soon as the one or two games on West Coast, on Pacific time end, they can just pop the podcast right out. They just record like the last 7 minutes, and then the show is done. It saves 45 minutes in getting the shows to you. I just love it. I love the dedication. It touches my heart. Yesterday, we did our reverse chronological lightning round. Had a chance to talk to Eric Goldman of Canis Hoopus about what's going on in Minnesota. Today, we will welcome a brand new guest to the podcast. His name is Alex Gres. He is with RaptorsRepublic.com, talking about the quick start for Toronto. Obviously, they lost a game yesterday. We recorded the podcast before that loss happened, so that will not be factored in. But we get into a little bit on the injury stuff, the Kawhi Leonard chemistry, the Danny Green thing, Pascal Siakam, all of these interesting young players on the Raptors that are blending in with the veterans, and it's led to a very quick start for a good basketball team. So that's coming up in just a few minutes. Typically around that interview, we're going to look back at the storylines from Monday. Again, Monday's show, where we do our reverse chronological lightning round, we do go through all the box scores from the weekend. That's the only show during the week where we break down specifically the box scores from the night before. The rest of these shows, we will focus on what I deem to be the biggest few stories from the previous night, and this is fantasy stuff, right? And then get you situated for what's coming up this following evening, meaning today, if you're listening to the podcast the day it got released, Today is, of course, an 8-game Tuesday. It's actually a pretty busy Tuesday. We'll look at the gambling lines for tonight, and then we'll also talk about what we want to watch from a fantasy standpoint. Of course, that leads to our homework assignments. We had some homework from Monday night. Atlanta and New York were basically the two teams that I put on the list as the clubs I wanted everybody paying attention to. And while we may have not gotten a ton of information out of Atlanta, we got some, and we got a lot out of New York. But seeing as how we did assign 2 pieces of homework, we're going to go over both of them. In Atlanta, we were watching DeAndre Besbris to see if he was a thing, and my expectation was that he probably wouldn't be, and as it turned out, he probably isn't be. He had 5.7 boards, 2 assists, and a steal, while putting up some very low usage numbers. The potential value for Besbris is in threes, rebounds, and steals, which is an interesting combination. But, there's a guy like a PJ Tucker out there who's a bit more reliable in those same categories. John Collins is still a few weeks out, and that is also going to put a dent into anybody doing anything in the forward spots in Atlanta. However, while Besbris did not play out last night, Dwayne Dedmon sort of did. Not a great line, 11 points, 5 boards, a steal, and a three-pointer, but he went 4 for 8 from the field, 2 for 2 at the free throw line, did not have a turnover in 23 minutes. My expectation for Dedmon is that 24-minute range. I don't think they want to push him much farther than that because of an injury history. He is a veteran leader on that team, and they desperately need those because the rest of the team is not very good. Miles Plumlee saw 10 minutes at the center position yesterday. Alex Len still played 15 minutes. So things are only going to get more complicated when Collins comes back if they want to run him at the 5. So I think Dedmon at 24 minutes, he is a top 100 guy. He should be owned and used. Not exciting, but should be on a team, I think is where we can probably leave that one. I was sort of half watching Portland, Indiana for a couple of reasons. Number one, it was one of the early games on and allowed me to, trial run my league pass while my kid was sleeping on my lap. But number two, I wanted to see the minute breakdown for Indiana as they get into some more competitive basketball games. They were all these blowouts right out of the chute. Teams were trying to figure out what the hell they're doing to start the year, and Indiana either wiped them off the floor or themselves got wiped up. And things are settling now, and it was really nice to see. Thad Young played 31 minutes. He had 16 and 4 with a couple of steals and a three-pointer. That's what you want out of Thad. Oladipo had 21, 9, and 7. Didn't shoot the ball well, but looked better. And most importantly, and this is the guy that everybody was getting ready to send out to pasture, Darren Collison, with Tyreek Evans back in this ball game, put up 17 and 6 with 2 steals, 2 rebounds, and 8 out of 14 shooting. So that typically strong field goal percent. He didn't make his three-point tries, but frankly, we're okay. If this is the lines we get, he's never a big three-point shooter, usually hovering in that 1 to 1.5 range per game. So, if all things kind of equal themselves out, you get yourself a point guard, assists, steals, good percentages. This is the Darren Collison you drafted. This is even better, frankly, than the Darren Collison you drafted, but that's how the law of averages work. He had some bad games, so he'll have a couple of good games, and things are going to be okay. We've got a lot of questions about dropping Collison, about him being on the waiver. Should we pick him up? It just doesn't take much for a guy like him, a 9-cat type of guy, to turn the corner. And there were some really bad games for Darren Collison early this year. He had a 5.3 assist game where they blew out the San Antonio Spurs. He had a 0.5 assist game. The thing is, he wasn't shooting the ball well in many of those contests. In the 2 games where he shot the ball a little bit better, the assists and steals were a bit on the lower side. Everything was just finding itself. The minutes weren't there, a lot of blowouts, as we mentioned. Now they've played 3 out of their last 4 have been mostly competitive basketball games, and over those, he has 21 assists, so he's averaging over 5 assists per game in that stretch. He has 9 steals in those 4 games, which, mind you, not sustainable, but still a whole heck of a lot better. and the field goal percent is coming back up. He had one bad game, obviously, in that mess. One out of those three, I mean, and then the last two, he's been well over 50%. So we're starting to see shades of the Darren that we were drafting over the last week. He's a top 60 guy, and that's with one pretty bad game mixed into the last two. He's on his way. He's on his way, guys. So hopefully you held on, or if somebody else dropped him, hopefully you were able to scoop him up. Everything should be fine. Not that every game is going to be fantastic from this point forward, but he's starting to find his rhythm in their new rotations, and that's all you can really ask for. If you're a Tyreek Evans owner, you just got to stand pat. He's not going to be playing giant minutes this year. He's usually more of a per-minute producer than we saw last night, and I believe he too will be fine. Also got a lot of questions, and this Indiana team has taken up all of our time today. Got a lot of questions about Miles Turner going these days. This was actually really close to being a good line. 10 points, 9 rebounds, a steal, and 3 blocks. The problem was that he missed all 4 of his free throws. If he makes his free throws 14 and 9 with a steal and 3 blocks, I mean, what were you hoping for? He was never going to be a 20-point scorer on this team. 9 rebounds is more than I think you could have ever hoped for on a night-to-night basis. 3 blocks, outstanding. That's why you drafted him. He's not going to be an over 50% shooter because there are some jump shots involved, so you want him up around 48, and you want him to make 80% of his free throws. People lose sight, I think, of why they're drafting particular guys. And yes, this ended up being a crummy line because of the free throw shooting, and the fact that he's shooting now 67% at the charity stripe is dragging his value down. But overall, 12 points, not that far off from what I think you should have been hoping for. 5.7 rebounds is a bit on the low side. We'd like to see that get up to 7. 0.4 steals, okay, whatever. You know, if we could get it to 0.6, 0.7, I'd be thrilled. But over 2 blocks a game and only 1 turnover, these are all very close to what you were looking for with Miles Turner. What you drafted him for, probably around number 40, basically looking back at 2 seasons ago when he shot 51% from the field, 81% at the free throw line, and went for 0.9 steals and 2 blocks. If he gets back to that mark, I think that should be your target. And he's not that far off. He's just not. In fact, the real difference at this point is the free throw line. That's almost it. 1.5 rebounds less, I guess. I mean, you're looking at a guy who could very easily rocket back into that top 40 spot. Everybody's panicking on Miles Turner. But to me, he's really not that far away from what the projections were, at least in my mind, when I was looking at him near 40. I thought he would fall farther. That was the thing that really upset me this year, and he just didn't. Other storylines from this ball game: Zach Collins got 27 minutes. Yusuf Nurkic only 18. I guess he struggled early in this game. Sounded like maybe Nurk had a little bit of foul trouble early. It didn't carry through. Nurk only ended the game with 2 fouls, so he did settle down at some point. Collins just outplayed him from partway through towards the finish. I didn't think Zach Collins could get it done in 20 minutes, but 27 obviously is a very big difference. He was getting it done in 20 minutes. I just thought the wheels would come off, but if they're cranking his minutes up, well, the sky's the limit. This guy could turn out to be really something special. I hope you guys acted faster than I did on that one, because he looks good. He looks good. He's blocking shots. He's hitting threes. Although, again, not going to shoot 70% for the year. I know that it seems like, well, I mean, just do it every night. Then why the hell should it not work? He's only shot under 50% in 1 of his 6 games so far, and he's been over 70% in 4 of the 6 games so far. Yeah, that's not holding for a guy who does get attempts from downtown. So, not to say he's not going to be special, but it's not going to be quite to this level, right? He's a top 30 guy right now, heavily weighted by a 70% field goal and 89% free throw clip. 88, excuse me. The other stuff is sort of Miles Turner-esque. I mean, this is what you're, right? Like if Miles Turner was shooting better, he'd be this guy in more minutes. You get it. Sacramento's a team we were always watching, but nothing really changed from last night. So as far as storylines go, not much to update. I think I mentioned on a podcast that I think this is Bogdan Bogdanovic stash time. He's supposed to be due back in about a week, and there are plenty of wing minutes that he could take from guys like Justin Jackson and Iman Shumpert, and if the Kings are really committed to going young, there's room for him to pile up some assists. This team is running and passing, so I think now is the time. On the Miami side, the storylines were what happens to people as they start to get healthy. Well, Justice Winslow played 24 minutes. Kelly Olynyk fell flat on his face. He had a couple quick fouls, and then also, much like Nurkic, stayed out of foul trouble the rest of the game, largely because he just didn't play that much the rest of the game. Eric Spoelstra did not like the way the starters were playing early in the third quarter. He only saw, I think, 6 second-half minutes, which is a pisser because he was coming on and the matchup didn't work. I'm curious to see if they leave him in the starting lineup. If they do, I'm super bullish on Kelly Olynyk, so don't give up on him after one rough game. He still got you 1 3, 1 steal, and 1 block in an otherwise terrible effort. So this is as bad as it gets. I'm not picking up Justice Winslow. I am considering a drop of Rodney McGruder. He still played 32 minutes in this game, but now Wayne Ellington is close, Waiters is close, Johnson is close. I think what this game showed is there's a clear pecking order, and it's Richardson, Dragic, and Whiteside, the 3 guys that are going to be out there and getting most of the usage. Interestingly, Kelly Olynyk had the 4th highest usage on the team when he was on the floor. He just wasn't on the floor. So keep him. Olynyk's a hold. McGruder's a hold for now. Richardson, Dragic, Whiteside are all playing well. Hassan's free throw shooting has been terrible so far this year, but he's blocking shots at a crazy clip. So hopefully other stuff kind of evens itself out. New York was the other homework assignment from last night. I hope you watched this game. I did, and I really liked what I saw from Frank Ntilikina. He was a guy I was extremely down on to start the year because he was on the floor for 35 minutes and had a usage of about 10. Well, the last 2 games, his usage has been up closer to 20. That is a huge jump. It's not the kind of seam-busting usage that's going to turn him into a top 25 guy, but if he's on the floor for 30-plus minutes and he's a good defender and he's actually contributing on the offensive side, he's worth owning. So pick him up, see what happens. You can very rarely find a point guard playing 30-plus minutes that can defend and that he's that guy. So, yeah, I mean, Hardaway out-assisted him by a 2-to-1 factor, 8-4. So maybe you're not going to get 6 or 7 assists per game. But if you can get a point guard who's scoring 10 to 12 points, 1 to 1.5 to 2 3-pointers, and he's a good rebounding point guard, 5 boards last night, maybe 5 assists. Look for 11, 4, and 5 with a steal. And that's a pretty good late-round point guard to have, provided he doesn't ruin your percentages too much, and he made his free throws last night, so that's a good sign. Field goal percent I don't think is ever going to be all that high, especially if he's chucking away from downtown, but hopefully low to medium volume. I just think it's worth a look, right? I think everybody can basically find use for a point guard in this day and age, so throw his name into your little search bar, see if he's owned in your league or any of your leagues. And after last night, he might be owned in all of them. I was hoping to get him in one of my leagues where you can't make moves until the following morning, but who the hell can stay up to midnight anymore? I'm an old man. I would beat people the old-fashioned way by making moves in the middle of the morning. There were no storylines from Golden State, Chicago. There were no real storylines, I thought, from Toronto, Milwaukee, because Kawhi Leonard and Giannis Antetokounmpo sat out. But it is worth mentioning that Ersan Ilyasova played 24 minutes of extremely high usage, had 19 and 10. He's probably worth streaming when Giannis is out, but understand that he could also fall flat on his face. Danny Greenwatch, 8 points, 5 boards, a steal, and 2 3-pointers. Obviously not his best ball game of the year, but we've seen far worse. He seems to play worse when Kawhi Leonard is off the floor. He still played 30 minutes, even with Delon Wright playing 14. Let's see how those numbers shake out over the next couple weeks as everybody gets healthy for Toronto. And I know everybody's going to be asking about Pascal Siakam. He's actually owned in every single one of my leagues, but he probably should have been owned anyway as kind of a guy to sit on for the hopes that he could blow up. Everybody that we've talked to about him is super high, and so is Alex, who you'll hear from momentarily. And I believe he was a pretty highly ranked guy in the Brewski 150 this year. This is him starting to tap into it a little bit. Not going to get 16 shots when Kawhi Leonard is healthy. Serge Ibaka's probably not going to take 21 shots when Kawhi Leonard is in there, which he will be tonight. He's just sitting out half of a back-to-back. But Pascal Siakam, unlimited upside. Josh Okogie streaming here while Andrew Wiggins is out. That's the only storyline from Lakers, Minnesota. Luka Doncic in overtime had 31, 8, and 4. I would say sell high. I think he's going to have a pretty good season. This is obviously going to be one of the better marks. DeAndre Jordan missed both of his free throws. That number is going to start to level off a little bit as well. And the last storyline we were paying attention to yesterday was what would happen for Denver in this continuing who's going to fill in for Will Barton situation. Monte Morris, not the guy. Kind of warned everybody, I think. We're like, look, there's a little bit of a flash in the panty feel to that one. Trey Lyles had 17 points and very little else in this ball game, although he did make all 4 of his free throws and did have 2 steals. If he can be the guy to step up and do it, that'd be great. But he and Paul Millsap are literally splitting power forward minutes right now, and nobody else is involved in that bucket. Millsap went 26 minutes and 52 seconds, and Lyles went the other 21 minutes and 8 seconds. It was straight power forward bucket. So if you're hoping that Lyles would pick up some of Will Barton's stuff, that has not been the case yet, and it doesn't look like that's going to be the case moving forward. Denver looks good. That's pretty cool, and New Orleans was without Anthony Davis and Elfrid Payton, and that just meant more Drew Holiday and Nico Mirotic and Julius Randle. Anything else would be a relatively bad decision. All right, those are the storylines from Monday. Again, I know beginning of the year here, I think we're spending a little more time on storylines than we had to. Just a lot of things to watch. This is still the time of year where random guys emerge, so you want to be ready for it. And so as the season goes on, we're going to hit some stretches where there's just nothing happening with teams. It's just the same guys every night. And then our look-backs, our storyline assessment here on the podcast will probably be a little bit shorter. We do want to focus on guests these days, and there are a lot of them coming on, a lot of new ones this week, which is really cool. We got Alex Gres coming up in just a few moments here. Again, trying to focus a little bit on breaking news. Toronto probably doesn't fit that mold, but we are going to talk to Adam Maines of Valley of the Suns later in the week to find out what the heck's going on with Devin Booker out. Can anybody actually step up and do some stuff for Phoenix? Going to be talking to... Adam Maines is on Thursday's show. Excuse me, I got my schedule crisscrossed here. I'm very sorry. Tomorrow's show, I don't know how I forgot this for a moment. This is why you should always write everything down. Vince Miracle, ladies and gentlemen, back on the podcast tomorrow. We're going to be talking Sacramento Kings. A blast from the past. Not sure how many of you guys were listening to this show back when Vince and I were co-hosting it right out of the chute in late 2016. My old buddy, man, the Miracle Man. He's coming on the podcast tomorrow. That'll be Wednesday's episode. I think he and I are just going to do the whole show together, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe I'll let him go before I do the gambling part. Thursday, we'll have Adam Maines on the podcast, and then Friday is going to be Brew. Next week... This is the beauty of it when you got 1,000 guests lined up. Next week, we're going to talk to Tyler Watts of The Smoking Cuban. That's a Dallas Mavericks blog. We're going to be talking to Joe Garcia. Make sure I'm getting everybody's name right. He handles the Locked On Spurs podcast. We're going to talk San Antonio. Plenty of questions surrounding guys like Derek White and what they might do when they come back from injury. Right now, the Spurs are fairly straightforward, but I know a lot of folks are thinking about stash stuff. We will be talking to Ben Vasconcellos from the Wiz of Oz. I almost called him the Wizard of Oz. It's just the Wiz of Oz, so Washington Wizards. That'll be coming up on next week's podcast. Pretty sweet. That's the point of all of that. But enough look-aheads. We'll do that a little bit more later on in the podcast. Let's get to the guest right now. Okay, so there's no specific breaking news happening with the Raptors right now. I know a lot of the stuff that we've been trying to do has been, what's the big story? We had Ty Lue getting fired over the weekend. We have the continuing Jimmy Butler saga. But there are stories happening in Toronto, and I wanted to explore those because, frankly, from a reality standpoint, they're really interesting and kind of fun. Every year in my damn playoff bracket, I pick the Raptors, and every year the Cavs have knocked them out. So I do have kind of a weird soft spot for Toronto for whatever reason. And then obviously on the fantasy side, because there are other things happening besides just Kawhi Leonard and Kyle Lowry. And for that, we brought in Alex Gres of Raptors Republic. He's making his Fantasy NBA Today podcast debut. We are extremely thankful for that. Alex, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
All right, so I want to dive in real quickly here on the Raptors' hot start. They look like they've been playing together for 3 years. I guess the question is, how is it possible that a team that unloaded basically the longest tenured Raptor and brought in this guy that was supposedly a problem in San Antonio and just an unbelievable talent but was coming off injury, how have they had this type of chemistry, this hot start with almost no time to work with one another?
Yeah, he's not a problem in Toronto, I'll tell you that. I think chemistry is much easier built with high IQ players, and to their credit, Masai Ujiri and Bobby Webster built a team of a lot of players that answer that category perfectly. I mean, these guys, they know their strengths, they know their weaknesses, they're unselfish. And the more guys that you have like that, the easier it is to integrate pieces, big or small.
So has everybody? You seem? It feels like everybody's just sort of bought into whatever Coach Nurse wants to do. I mean, they look incredible so far.
Yeah, and I think it starts with Kyle Lowry. To be honest, I wasn't sure how he was going to react coming into the year, losing his best buddy DeMar, but he always talks about it's championship or bust every year, and he's put his money where his mouth is. He came in and he's force feeding the bigs. He's integrating. He's integrating Leonard. He still leads the NBA in assists. He scores his threes at a high clip. Still takes charges. And I mean, when he's the heart and soul of this team. So anybody that comes in and sees him give 110%, they can do nothing less. They have to do the same thing. And with Kawhi Leonard, I mean, this team never had a two-way star. The way that he scores points, I still shake my head sometimes at how easy it is. And add to that the 5-man defensive unit that they have with Kyle Lowry, Danny Green, Kawhi Leonard, Pascal Siakam, and Serge Ibaka. Together, these guys, they put the clamps on teams at the beginning of games and at the end of games just to go on major runs, especially against Boston. You would have seen that with the double block, and Boston couldn't buy a bucket towards the end there.
And I'm definitely going to bug you about a couple of those names you mentioned as far as the defensive unit. Kyle Lowry has been unreal so far. Like you said, he's shooting 58% from the field. He's averaging 20 and 10. I mean, I got to think that those numbers maybe come back down to earth a little bit, right? Even if the leadership remains the same.
Yeah, they will likely. But that's what Raptors need from him is leadership, is setting the example. But right now, those numbers, we're rolling with them.
Okay, so Kyle Lowry's been excellent. We know Kawhi Leonard, there's been almost nothing lost. Like, missed a whole season of basketball, and he's still just going out there and dominating. He's at 27 points per game, 8 rebounds, a steal and a half, 0.6 blocks. These are the guys that everybody is aware of. But the guys that people maybe are a little bit less aware of, folks that people in the fantasy community are always watching, people in the sort of the NBA community that gets a little bit deeper in are saying, hey, what do these guys mean to the team? Let's start with the one that was already in Toronto last year, and that was Pascal Siakam. He's been showing growth. We've seen improve defensively. He was the guy that they put in when they we could see even down the stretch last year. He was sort of a guy that allowed them to switch a lot of things. For a big guy, he's been very good defending the perimeter. My question for you, Alex, is what growth have we seen from Siakam on the offensive side of the ball? Because we've always known he can play defense with the best of them. Is he doing enough these days on the offensive side to warrant extra time on the floor? And is he the guy that potentially could emerge to do more as the season goes along?
Yeah, I think he definitely could be that guy. If you listen to people around the team, he's got the highest ceiling out of all our young guys. And he's getting more and more opportunity to show it on the offensive side because Nick Nurse believes in a lot of freedom for his guys, and people seem to be really enjoying it around the team. And Siakam specifically, man, he's got obviously length on defense, but he's quick. He hustles. He's got incredible handles. He runs the fast break like a point guard at 6'9". The only thing really, really missing from his game is a consistent shot. If he gets that consistent shot, I don't know, his ceiling is very, very high with that.
Could he potentially overtake any of the other big men? Like, could he end up becoming the center of the future for the Raptors and Ibaka and Valanciunas would lose out? Or do they like him more as the 4?
I would say the 4, at least for another 2-3 years.
Okay.
Size-wise, I just don't see him. He gets bullied around by bigger guys. Even guys that are a little bit thicker than him, not necessarily. If you watch him play against LaMarcus Aldridge, for example, last season, he got completely bullied by him. It's a bit difficult for him to hang with those guys, but a switchy 4, that's the key. If he gets a shot, then he can be the perfect switchy 4. You don't even need him at the 5.
Yeah, very true.
And so far, he's hit, I think 3 of his 8 3-pointers this year. So small sample size. So we'll see. Too early to judge.
Yeah, too early to judge for sure. A guy that's obviously trending up, played 37 minutes in their last ball game. Raptors 6-0 to start the year. And a big reason why, seemingly, is the other guy that came over in the Kawhi Leonard trade. The guy that nobody really talked about the entire offseason, and that's Danny Green, who we've seen before in in San Antonio, like 3-4 years ago, was a huge piece of what the Spurs were doing, and then started to fade for whatever reason. We don't know what goes on behind the scenes, but just like slowly lost his role, where in 2014, Danny Green was a 12-point, 4-rebound guy who was hitting 2.5 3-pointers and a steal and a block, and then it dropped to 7 points per game as shot attempts went down. And all of a sudden now, he's in Toronto, and it almost looks like he's been freed a little bit. He's 11 points, 5 rebounds, a steal, a block, 3 3-pointers a game. He looks really comfortable with Toronto. But Alex, my question for you isn't whether or not he's comfortable, because we can kind of see that in the numbers. My question is, can he maintain this role even as the Raptors get healthy? Where do the minutes come from for guys like Delon Wright as he comes back from injury? Can Danny Green do this all season long, or is some of this just because there are some guys missing?
Well, yeah, he's got a lot of minutes right now because he's got a good chemistry with Kawhi, and they're trying to really integrate him. And yeah, the injuries, Van Vliet and Wright have not played together this season just yet, with the exception of the season opener. So his minutes are 31 right now. It's a little high. I mean, if he's still giving you those threes and clutch defense and helping lock down opposing guards, Kyle Lowry really needs that, because Lowry doesn't want, or the coaching staff doesn't want to put too many hard defensive assignments of the top point guards on Kyle, because we need him on offense. We need him ready for playoffs. So Green has been very efficient and effective at helping him out on that end. Once everybody's healthy, once the bench unit gets going, because it hasn't really looked like itself so far this year, his minutes are probably going to come down a little bit. But again, if he keeps knocking down those triples and playing hard defense, he could easily keep playing 28 minutes a game or so.
We're talking to Alex Gres of Raptors Republic. By the way, you can follow Alex on Twitter at AlexGres10, the number 10. And Raptors Republic is on Twitter at Raptors Republic. No surprise there. And RaptorsRepublic.com is the website. Last question for you before I let you get back to your day, and that is, as this season shakes out, presumably there will be some bumps and bruises along the way. I guess maybe we don't even need to get into all that predictive stuff, but as Delon Wright gets healthy, as Fred VanVleet gets healthy, as everything sort of settles into place, could we potentially see a run like last year where the Raptors starters didn't have to play the fourth quarter for about 2 weeks in a row? Like, is this team still as deep as it was last year? It feels like it.
I think so. I mean, we've got Greg Monroe, who is a pretty serviceable backup center, hasn't seen a minute of non-garbage time action this year.
Good point.
Yeah, that bench unit, they need Van Vliet and Wright together to really get it going. I also think they're missing Pascal Siakam's playmaking because last year he was a big part of that group. And this year they have OG Anunoby in there instead, who, in my opinion, he fits better with the starters. I could actually see Siakam's numbers and utilization grow so much more if he's back with the second unit, helping orchestrate that stuff.
That's
because they have too many ball handling, high usage players in the starting lineup for Siakam to really shine. But at the end of the day, yeah, they're deep, and I could see last year becoming another. Last year happening again.
That's cool. That's a really interesting thought on Siakam. So if we see any movement there from bench to starter or whatnot, it from a fantasy perspective at least, I don't think people need to be too concerned is what I'm hearing from you. Hey, what's the latest over at Raptors Republic? What can folks see if they head on over there right now?
Well, we've got a little bit of a management change, but we're still trying to put up articles every day. If you want to follow my work specifically, it's called The Alternate Basketball Histories. And it's a fictional account of some goings-ons in the Raptors universe.
That sounds fun. Alex, thanks so much. I know podcast debut for you here on Fantasy NBA Today. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was. Thanks for having me, Dan. Much appreciated.
Oh, but didn't stress you out too much. Again, folks, you can follow Alex on Twitter at AlexGres10, ALEXGRES, the number 10. And every day, by the way, when we do these shows, we attach a coupon code to our guests on the podcast. You can get $3 off the Hoop Ball in-season premium pass, and we'll just make this one easy. This one is just going to be GRES. GRES is your coupon code for $3 off anything, actually, at the Hoop Ball store. But right now, the stuff that's available, because we're into the season, is the in-season premium pass. Again, Alex Gres 10 on Twitter. Raptors Republic is the website. Alex, one more time, thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Well, that's new guest number 1. Pretty good, huh? Shoes to fill. Thanks again to Alex Gres for talking Raptors. We'll get him back on the podcast in the not-too-distant future. As the team gets healthy, we start to see how the minutes shake out. And then we'll get a feel. I think the questions will be, how does this play itself going forward? I always want to be prepared for the next possible move. And, of course, with us here, we're just watching Danny Green all the damn time. Tuesday, that's tonight. We got a pretty decent-sized Tuesday card. This is an unusual development, but one I'm not arguing with. So, let's do a little look ahead. Sacramento is in Orlando. This one should have a decent number of points being scored. Orlando's favored by 5. Sacramento on a back-to-back. De'Aaron Fox may or may not play. Apparently, he was grabbing his side late in yesterday's ball game, so we'll get more information on that. It seems a needlessly large line for the Magic, but that's likely it, and a reason that I would probably stay away. Cleveland favored by 4.5 points at home to the Atlanta Hawks, a team starting to really press. They've got a new coach. Is there a coaching bump? Maybe. I think they win this game. But laying 4.5 points, yes, the Hawks are on a back-to-back. They got young legs, man. I don't think I can lay 4.5 for a team that hasn't won a ball game yet. Charlotte, 4-point favorites at home to the Miami Heat. The Heat coming off a home defeat, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know why my brain just farted on that one. Yeah, they lost by 10 to the Kings yesterday. Losing my mind here, guys. Look for Miami to try to bounce back a little bit. This is actually a divisional battle. This is a strikingly important early season game because, to me, these two teams and the Wizards are all going to be sort of 500-y teams that are backing their way towards winning a division and getting a playoff berth out of it. They got to beat each other. So look for Charlotte to come out guns blazing. I have not been particularly impressed with the Heat. The fact that I took their season-long under makes me feel like some of what I'm seeing is right. This is a team that just needed a big shakeup, and they didn't get one. You can only run in place for so long before guys start to get tired of doing it. Slightly into Charlotte, but again, 4 points. 4 points is not nothing in a game that I think is going to be pretty tight, so I'd probably avoid that one as well. Toronto gets Kawhi Leonard back. They'll host the 76ers, who are also on a back-to-back. Slightly into Toronto, I think, although, again, everybody's on a back-to-back in this ballgame. Boston, 8.5-point favorites at home to the Detroit Pistons. Memphis is laying 2 to Washington, who has shown themselves to be a complete and utter mess at this point. Rockets by 4 at home. The Portland Trailblazers are in town, and the Clippers are in Oklahoma City. The Thunder favored by 2 in this game. This is a weird one. Going back and kind of looking through at what these two teams have done, you might feel like betting on the Clippers because they have kind of outperformed what people believed their power rankings to be. Thunder, remember, got creamed by the Clippers by 16 points 11 days ago. I can do my math on this one. So I think there's going to be a little bit of a revenge angle at play here. I would take a slight lean to the Thunder, much as I think the Clippers are actually generally undervalued on a game-to-game basis. Not betting any of these things. Again, it's still too early to be sort of strong on something, but if I had to put a few thoughts on paper, I would say Memphis ever so slightly, Thunder ever so slightly, and those are probably the two that seem the most interesting on the card. It's also kind of a weird night where every single home team is the favorite. That'll happen from time to time. Obviously, there's a 3 to 4 point swing for a home court over a neutral site, but every single home team here is no worse than a 3-point neutral site underdog, which doesn't always happen. You've got the Thunder, who are right now considered a 1-point neutral site dog to the Clippers, and the Grizzlies, same deal with the Washington Wizards. I'm not sure I completely agree with those feelings. It sounds like Steven Adams should be back for OKC. I think they put up a pretty good fight in this ballgame. Slight leans to those two home teams. From a fantasy standpoint, well, it's still Jonathan Isaac watch for Orlando. Otherwise, there isn't a whole lot worth paying attention to in that ballgame. I think we have a decent feel for Sacramento until Bogdan Bogdanovic comes back. Atlanta, it's kind of the same thing as yesterday. Can Dwayne Dedmon continue what he's doing? Not a whole lot else going on there. Cleveland is a big-time team to watch. Coaching changes can create lineup changes, and if this lights a fire under a guy like George Hill, you want to be the first person to pounce on that. Maybe Rodney Hood starts putting up 20 shots a game. You want to be able to pounce on that. I don't see that many other directions it could go. I mean, I think Larry Nance is probably owned in your league already, so I left him out of that discussion, but he should definitely be owned in whatever the hell is going on here. I'm not that excited about Colin Sexton. I know they might try to go young, but his stat set to me is incomplete at best and kind of crummy when you actually shake it out. But still, I think you ought to be watching this game. To me, Cleveland is a homework assignment for tonight for sure. Otherwise, you got to go a bit later on in the schedule to get to the other games worth paying attention to. Miami, Charlotte, I think you could basically look at a box score at the end and have a pretty good feel for what happened. Kelly Olynyk, it would be someone to watch in Miami if you wanted to keep an eye on that game live as it's happening, but I'm not dropping him after one bad game. Memphis, Kyle Anderson is a guy everybody's paying really close attention to. You could watch that game live, see if he's in there and actually getting involved in the basketball game. Zach Collins again with Portland. Houston has no James Harden, so how much more does PJ Tucker do? Seems like with Adams probably playing for the Thunder, Nerlens Noel was more of a one-time thing, but Jeremy Grant is still a guy we want to pay attention to. And then for the Clippers, it's always, who's going to be the first guy to get hurt, which is going to free up a whole bunch of minutes and touches for the other dudes who then become more interesting, right? Like if Avery Bradley gets hurt, then it frees up minutes for Lou Williams at the 2 and maybe more minutes for Pat Beverly and Gilgeous-Alexander. Or what if Beverly gets hurt? Then you got more minutes for Lou and Gilgeous-Alexander there, and I don't know how much that impacts Avery Bradley. What if Gallo gets hurt? Does everybody shift up a spot and try to play a little bit bigger? There's a lot going on with the Clippers. As long as they're healthy, it's a little bit of a tons of mouths to feed kind of situation. But someone's going to get dinged up. It's not going to be long. It's just how it is with a lot of these guys. And not that you necessarily need to be watching the game for that, but if it happens, then certainly pay attention to the results from that game. Folks, I think that'll about do it for the stuff on the docket on this podcast. We covered the storylines from yesterday, got you ready for tonight. Cleveland Cavaliers is your homework assignment for this evening. Let's hope something comes of it. But let's remember also, sometimes we do a homework assignment and it turns into nothing. That's okay. We just want to be there and we want to be ready if something does surface that causes us to make a move. If something surfaces. So I guess you could watch Jeremy Grant. You could probably watch that Clippers-Thunder game. That'd be an interesting basketball game. We'll make that the optional extra credit homework assignment. Folks, as always, at the end of the show, I want to drop down to a knee and ask you, please subscribe to Fantasy NBA Today. It would mean the world to me. A rating or a review would mean part of the world to me. That's number 2 on my priority totem pole. Tomorrow again, Miracle Man, a spooky Halloween episode with old Vincent. That's going to be a lot of fun. Can't wait to talk to my old pal, and I hope you guys enjoy that one as well. Thanks again to Alex Gres. Remember, coupon code is GRES, G-R-E-S. Go to hoop-ball.com, click on the Premium tab, choose Go Premium, get yourself the in-season membership. It's awesome. It's $5 off for you just because right now, and then you can throw another $3 coupon code in there and get the whole damn thing for $22 for the entire season. It's $367 a month. It's not very much. You know, get a box of tea and make your own tea at home for a day. Don't go to Starbucks and you can pay for a month of premium membership. It's pretty easy to find $367 lying around. I'm Dan Besbris for Alex. Have a wonderful Tuesday, everybody. This is Fantasy NBA Today, Hoop Ball presentation. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
This has been a Hoop Ball presentation.